Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Fundraisers Friday. If it's Friday, all good things for fundraisers with Tony Bell.
Happy Friday. It's so good to see you again, Julia, and welcome to our viewers and listeners today. We're really excited to talk about monthly giving plans.
We are, because you know what? I think this is the secret sauce to a lot of really successful organizations. We don't always talk about it, we don't always promote it, but I really think this is like one of those things that everybody can be doing. It might start small, but it can get big. And so I'm really excited to explore this with you, Tony, and see what we can come up with today on this Friday. I love ending the week with you, my friend. It's just magical.
Likewise, I look forward to it every single Friday.
It's really a lot of fun. Well, hey, it's a lot of fun are these amazing partners that we've also have going on this journey with us. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Fundraisers Friday, our new episodes here today, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy, joined today, as I am every Friday, with Tony Bell, Mr. Nonprofit Consultancy. Welcome, like I said, my friend. Friday's always a good day.
Always a good day. No, it's great to be here. I look forward to these conversations. I say it every Friday. I'll say it every Friday moving forward. I really do look forward to these conversations. And what I like too about this opportunity, Julia, and thank you for providing this opportunity for me to share, my lived experiences and what I hear from others across the country. But it provides me a great opportunity too for my own lifelong learning to dig a little deeper into these topics to make sure that we're conveying the best possible information to our viewers and listeners so that it's current and relevant.
Tony, I love that you said that, and thank you. I think you're like one of the highlights of this wackadoo journey that I embarked upon during the pandemic. Again, I thought it was going to be a 2-week gig, and here we are, 5 years, 1,200 episodes. But I've got to ask you this question, and it just like popped into my head. You're such a seasoned professional. Have you seen a lot of change over the trajectory of your service and your leadership? Because we are a changing nation, and I'm not just talking about politically. I mean, all these different things, socially, economically, civically. um, do you think that the things that we talk about now would have been the things you talk about going back, several years or even decades?
Yeah, I do. I think a good portion of what we talk about, or a good percentage of what we talk about in these episodes, are things that we would have talked about in a very similar fashion 10, 15, 20 years ago. I think what's different is the way in which we frame the work. But I think that the core values and the core foundation of this work hasn't changed. Uh, Aside from technology, right, and just
Right.
how we have seen technology play
Right.
a critical role in our success as professional fundraisers. Even before AI, just talking about, we may have talked about this in a previous episode, just having a donor management system, having something other than a spreadsheet to put our information in, or 3-ring binders where
Yeah.
you would write down information. You'd have a donor profile and you would hand write the information and it would all be in a 3-ring binder. So being mindful of sensitive information, of course, but but now there's technology to help support all of that. So I think that's where the big change has taken place, is the conversations around how technology helps us to be better at the work that we do. And then I would also say that we've become better at looking at equity and access. So I think that a lot of that happened organically historically, but I think a lot of that happens more intentionally today
Yeah.
than it might have 10, 15, 20 years ago. So those
Right.
are the differences I think that I've seen since I leapt into the space. I jumped in the space, 1998.
Yeah. I love your comments and I love your wisdom and I absolutely agree with you. Um, I mean, I'm in the thick of it as you are. And so it's interesting to kind of think like, well, you know, how are we changing? What's the hot topic? Where do we need help and all this? But I think at the core of it, American society has always had this desire to be in service or address a mission, whether you agree with it, whether it's right, whether it's wrong. I mean, it's kind of baked into the fabric of our society and how we even lead in, from the faith community to our schools. I mean, now it blows my mind, Tony. It blows my mind that you can actually get a post-secondary degree in nonprofit management.
Right. Right.
Is what an incredible blessing to our
Mhm.
our country.
Mhm.
And now, we're seeing this throughout the world where people can get this type of education to be professional managers. I just think that's going to just push the trajectory of the health of our nonprofit sector just incredibly.
Without a doubt. Well, it helps emerging leaders, emerging, folks who are interested in the space. It helps them see a pathway to it,
Mhm.
as opposed to like a lot of us that just stumbled in it because we cared. So there's a very solid again pathway now for folks
Mhm.
that want to contribute to this space. So it
Mhm.
allows that. It creates a pipeline of new talent.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
for the sector. And then it also elevates the professionalism of the sector so that it's not viewed like many people, again, when we talked 15, 20 years ago, when you talked about a fundraiser, pretty much everyone just assumed you volunteered your time and did that. It was like, oh my gosh, you get paid to do that, so
Mhm.
so those types of things have certainly changed. And again, anything that elevates the sector professionally and creates good awareness is great.
Yeah, it's really an incredible time to be looking at this. And, I just had to ask you that. And so, but today we're going to talk about monthly giving plans. And I think this is one of those things that is somewhat new, but then it's not. I mean, I think what you said earlier, this is something that is able to be managed because we can use technology.
Hmm.
Back in the day I first did this, I remember there were cards and you would fill it out and then some poor soul would have to go through every month and like punch in the credit cards,
Hmm.
hopefully numbers, hopefully they did it right, or they'd have to like run down checks, right? There was no automatic withdrawal from your bank. I mean, it was really laborious and it was just frankly a nightmare. I
Hmm.
think a lot of organizations were just like, ugh. But let's talk about what it is at the core. What's at the core of a monthly giving plan?
Yes, the monthly giving plans are also, referred to as kind of recurring donation programs. And so to your point, Julia, back in the day, really, if you think about were there recurring donation opportunities, most of the times that was someone fulfilling a pledge. So they made a pledge and they may
Yes.
have been fulfilling their pledge on a monthly basis. So you
Mhm.
may have had those monthly donations coming in because somebody was fulfilling a pledge. But again, now with technology, it's so much easier. So then the conversation becomes, what does that campaign look like for recurring donations and monthly giving plans for our organization? So there are many different, and again, I did research to make sure just what I was aware of was still relevant, but also some new things. And so there's membership based monthly giving plans.
Mhm.
Uh, where there are different levels and based on the membership, let's say an arts organization, there's monthly
Right.
membership giving. And so you may get 2 passes to an exhibit at a base level and an invitation to one opening reception and your name is on the website, right? So there's
Mhm.
there's that kind. Uh, Project based, so where you have monthly giving plans that are very focused on a specific project or
Mhm.
program.
Mhm.
Uh, what else? I was trying to think. Mission based. If you're a children's organization, you may say, and we've seen it. We've seen the commercials. Give $10 a month, and that $10 will sustain feeding, housing, clothing, educating a child.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so it really is about, once you have the technology, the infrastructure, you said it very clearly. You do not want folks having to sit in front of a laptop and hand keying credit cards or pumping out monthly invoices for folks to respond to, right? So making sure that you are investing in the technology or whatever that the back office support needs to be, the infrastructure to
Mm-hmm.
successfully manage, these monthly giving programs.
Right. I think a lot of people point to public television here in the US as being one of the very first national organizations to do a monthly campaign. And,
Mhm,
and they used your word pledge, right? You
mhm,
make a pledge to make this contribution. And somewhere about 10 years ago, they moved in, they got a new CEO, and it used to be renewable, right? Every year you would give a new pledge. You would, be in, okay, I'm in for X number of, you know, dollars a month, and you'll get the free DVD of, the Les Miserables concert, or Ender, uh, um, any of their big stars that had like a recorded gift kind of thing, or their
mhm,
gift bag, or a mug, or whatever. But really interestingly, about 10 years ago, they switched it up to almost like perpetual giving, and then they added this line: you can cancel at any time, right? And I think a lot of folks didn't realize that this was just going to go on, because
mhm.
it's a $10 ding to your account every month. Most people are like, whatever, I'm not going to worry about it. Well, that's $120 a year that is flowing through without any stewardship.
Mhm,
Pretty easy, right?
mhm.
It's
But I
it's
think, yeah, and further on in the conversation today, I think we're going to talk a little bit about the stewardship of monthly donors and
Mhm.
and the pipeline that they might create for other
Mhm.
things.
So let's navigate a little bit towards that. What do you see is the average monthly gift, and more importantly, what percentage of an organization's revenue stream should this be? Because I think a lot of times we put too much emphasis on it, like it's going to solve all our problems, or it's just like, oh yeah, we have that, but everybody kind of forgets. Like, where do you see that happy spot?
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it's going to solve all of our problems, like you said, but it certainly can provide some peace of mind in knowing that X number of dollars are going to be coming into the organization monthly based on these recurring donation programs. But most recurring donation programs are really between $10 and $40 a month.
Okay.
So that's what, most of the ones that I'm familiar with are somewhere around the $20 to $30 a month.
Okay.
But they certainly, based on some of the research I did for today's conversation, can range anywhere from $10 to $40 a month that folks are
Mhm.
committing on a recurring monthly basis to an organization. I also learned that can, in most organizations that have this type of program, are realizing that it is 10 to 20% of their annual. For some, depending on the level of giving, it can be as much as 40%. Right.
Okay, hair on
Most
fire.
of them are 10 to 20%.
That's a lot. When you're looking at a consistent revenue stream that you can put in your budget, and you can say, I feel confident that we're going to have this amount, and you factor in like a 2 to 3% failure rate, probably. That's a hell of a boon.
Yeah, and also I learned in some of the research that I was doing that, you know, folks that participate in these types of monthly giving programs, you tend to have as much as 85 to 90% retention.
Wow.
So that's really
Amazing.
terrific retention. Of course, that doesn't mean you sign them up and they never hear from you again. These numbers come from programs that are robust and running well. So of course, if you're going to recognize that type of retention, then you have some some good stewardship that's taking place,
Mhm.
once someone's signed up for these monthly giving programs.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I love that you kind of drew that arc for us as to what does this mean? I mean, to start off the conversation today, to what is a monthly giving plan, to really the nuts and bolts of like how it can impact an organization. Super important, and really, we all need to be working on this. We really, really need to do. Now, this is one of the questions I have for you, Tony, because what should the percentage of our donor base be involved in? Because it seems to me like one of the knocks I've heard about this concept is that folks feel like, oh, well, if I get a donor in for $20 a month, that's where they're going to live. They're not going to, they have a higher capacity, but they'll be like, oh, yeah, I give. And then that's where the conversation stops. How do you see that playing out? And where should we make this live?
Yeah, so the way that I view this, Julia, is that if you consider that 10 to 20% or as much as 40% on the high end of your contributions are coming from folks that are committed to a monthly giving plan, that's a lot of people. When
Hmm.
you think about monthly giving donors versus a major gift donor, so you get that one big gift from a single donor, but
Hmm.
you may have hundreds of individuals that are contributing at $10, $20, $30 a month. So your stewardship program is really critical because they ultimately can become your pipeline for a larger individual gift, legacy gift, plan giving. I mean, it just goes on about the other possibilities. So it's all about how you approach those donors, what that stewardship looks like. How are you inviting them to learn more and participate in other areas of giving with the organization? I mean, just because I have opted to do a monthly giving plan, and a lot of folks do that because they want to contribute to a lot of organizations. So if
Hmm.
I am participating in a monthly giving plan with organization A, there's a strong possibility that I'm also participating in that in organization B, C, and D at
Right.
$10 or $20, $20 a month. Um, but but I also, even at $10 a month, want to know what's going on in my own backyard with the organization. And maybe I am somebody that loves going to a gala. Well, I want to make sure I'm aware of that information. And if I want
Hmm.
to buy a table or buy a ticket to go to the event, that I have that opportunity and that I'm not thought of uh, any less than other donors because of the amount of my monthly giving.
Right. I love that you brought that up because I think you're right. I think if you have a donor who understands this process, they're comfortable with it, they probably have a budget that they assign that they're going to give every month, and it's easy to have these automatic withdrawals, and then they can be more engaged with, what's going on. We had the most riveting conversation with one of our co-hosts, Wendy F. Adams,
Mhm.
whose mother recently passed away, and Wendy is the executress of her mother's estate, and her mother was a lifelong nurse, RN, worked in a hospital, and when her mother passed away, she found out that her mom had, I think it was like 7 or 9 monthly uh, giving societies that she was involved in that Wendy didn't know about, which, that's fine.
Yeah.
But it ended up over a period of time almost to $100,000 that this hardworking woman had donated every month. I mean, just this consistent thing to this broad spectrum
Mhm.
broad spectrum of nonprofits that somehow tugged at this woman's heart and in her pocketbook. And Wendy has a really interesting story about how that stewardship was managed when she had to connect with these organizations and say that her mom had passed away. how she was treated, what happened. Not one of them asked if Wendy wanted to take a tour or further engagement, or if there was a legacy gift. I mean, it's just a fascinating thing. So I think the conversation is that we do have to think of these people in a longer trajectory, and not just as a monthly $10. It is a pipeline, as you said, and for cultivation.
Yeah,
And we,
no, it is. And that's, that's fascinating that none of them asked if there was the possibility for a legacy gift or for some way, does Wendy, in honor of her mother, want to continue
I
these
know,
month, right? I mean, there's
I know.
all kinds of ways to frame that and communicate that.
Yeah,
And I think when those things happen, Julia, it speaks sometimes to just the overwhelming nature of this work for fundraisers, is that they get the email, they get the phone call, but they got to get ready for a board report, or just the magnitude sometimes of donors in their portfolio. And again, I often say, trying to be mindful that our audience is made up of small, medium, and large size organizations. I can see that very easily happening in
yeah,
small and medium sized organizations, where that fundraising professional is just like, I answer the phone, I want to, answer the question, show my empathy, say thank you, and then move on to the next thing. So a lot of times
absolutely.
the magnitude of work doesn't allow us to be forward thinking in those moments.
Well, I think what Wendy's observation was that these were organizations. Certainly, they're having people call them and trying to extricate themselves from an arrangement, but they didn't have a policy. They didn't have a plan. They didn't have the ability to say, quote unquote, script it out. Okay, well, wow, I'm sorry for your loss. How can we, as you use that wonderful word, how can we honor your family member that passed away, or in the case of Wendy's mom, how can we honor this? Would you like to know more about what her impact was, through this giving society? It was really, and I mean, here's a woman, Wendy Adams is in our sector. She's
Yes,
a
she
thought
is.
leader. You know what I mean? And so she was like, Julia, if this could happen to me, and I could be, in this and just gobsmacked by what went on. Imagine just somebody who's a regular, citizen and a regular donor, kind of seeing how this looks. So anyway, fascinating part of this topic of recurring gifts. Let's talk about getting your board staff and your volunteers to participate, because I think a lot of times, Tony, there's like a small group of people, or maybe one person that's like, we need to have a giving society, yay team, and then it kind of is like, it just kind of falls. How do we get folks involved in this?
Yeah, so there are, we talk all the time. I think I've said it on every show, Julia. We hear people say it all the time, right? Fundraising is a team sport. So it would make sense that even if you have a recurring, program, that you would want to get your board and staff and volunteers involved in it in some way. Uh, you know, you and I were talking a little bit in the green room about this particular part of today's conversation. And, we were chatting a little bit about just incentive programs. So, I've worked with organizations where, if whoever gets the most people signed up, whatever that might have been, gets a $50 gift card to, their favorite restaurant or something like that. So it's certainly appropriate to build in those types of incentives for team members and for volunteers. I don't know that I would build in any type of monetary
Okay.
benefit for board members. I just think that that's, for some reason, that doesn't settle right in my tummy.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about giving a board member a gift card for
Yeah.
for assisting with that. But there are certainly other ways of recognizing the work that they're doing and the contributions that board members are making in this particular scenario, to where they can feel like their efforts are valued, and the
Mm-hmm.
work that they're doing is felt and or feels relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, so incentives, contests to get folks involved. I think that your example with Wendy is very interesting because I think how important it is for us as fundraisers to contribute to organizations so that we're walking the talk, whether it's organizations that we work for or other things that we're passionate about, so that we have these real life experiences to reflect on and to think about, hold up the mirror and think, have I done that to someone? How can I prevent that from happening to one of our donors, what I just experienced? So it is important for board members and staff to participate in these programs just so they can have that experience of what it might feel like for others that will engage in their organization.
Right. Well, speaking of that, Giving Tuesday's coming up, and we will have a report that comes in from one of our great sponsors, Bloomerang, and they do a Giving Tuesday donation. It's a lot of organizations, and then they track, and it's minimal, a minimal amount, but they track what occurs, like how fast the response is. Did they get a thank you? Just like all of the different responses, and then they glean from that report, what's effective, what's not. And so they'll be coming on to talk about that after the fact, because I agree with you. If we're not engaging in this, and we assume that there's a customer experience. God, Tony, years ago, oh my God, I was like in my 20s. I hadn't thought of this for years. I was a Domino's Pizza secret shopper.
Of all the secret shoppers, I didn't know there was a Domino's secret shopper. So
yeah. I cannot make this up. It was through my business because it was in the downtown area, and it was exhaustive. So first they were like, you pay for the pizza and then we reimburse you, whatever.
Okay.
And I was like, well, hell, free pizza. I was a young gal. I'm like, how hard can that be? Well, it was exhaustive. The questions that they would ask, was the sauce too spicy? Was there enough cheese? It was like, you would think pizza's pizza from Domino's, but it wasn't. They were locked in to what the experience was. And I did it for years. And at first I thought it was kind of hokey. And then I really came to appreciate what they were doing, because this came from corporate, right? So, they were like, they wanted to know what my customer experience was. And it was a $10, back in the day, it was a $10 to $15 with a tip, right? It wasn't like I was buying a fancy European car. I was buying a pizza, but it was really interesting to see how that customer service was thought of, how it was monitored. And I love what you just said. Yeah, we need to be doing this. We need to be knowing what the ecosystem is for the donor experience.
And there are plenty of stories out there, Julia, of donors that are giving 7-figure donations because they had a good experience from the $100 donation.
Yes. I love that you said that. And I think that's a brilliant way to end this episode of Fundraisers Friday and the Nonprofit Show, because that ultimately, it's not about that $100 or that $10. It's about keeping our donors engaged and really making sure that they're part of the process. That monthly engagement piece, as you said, Tony, right off the bat at the top of the show, maybe they want to buy tickets, maybe they want to buy tables, they need to know what's going on so that you can engage them back in and grow their commitment with you.
Oh, absolutely. And engagement with monthly donors, it's the same strategy with any type of donor, in that your communication needs to be authentic, needs to be timely, and what you can do with monthly donors is make them feel like a sense, give them a sense of community. So when you send something to them, you're part of a community of over 100 people that contribute to our organization on a monthly basis. And you combined with those other individuals has allowed us to serve 50 families this month. And what does that mean? That means 100 meals, what,
Yeah.
again, whatever the data looks like. But
Yeah.
you can certainly, keep them engaged by creating a sense of community amongst your monthly donors and making
Amazing.
sure, again, that you're customizing your communication very specific to the way in which they're giving.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's just brilliant. Well, again, you are brilliant, my friend. The amazing Tony Bell, coming to us from the East Coast today. He comes to us from the East Coast every Friday, but it's just really a joy to tap into your wisdom and that huge brain of yours, because you've got such a wicked amount of information and success in there that you share with us. And so thank you, thank you, thank you, Tony Bell, Mr. Nonprofit Consultancy. Check him out. Again, another group to check out are all of our presenting sponsors, and they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Fundraisers Friday, woohoo, where we are, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. These are the folks that join us day in and day out. Okay, my friend, once again, you've got me all pumped up for Friday, got me all thinking about new things. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you too. I feel great, and I'm already looking forward to next Friday.
I know we got some great things on the horizon. And so stick with us because it's really a lot of fun and we have some amazing things that we're cooking up. So definitely check in with us. Hey, everybody, as we end each and every episode, this week's for some people, it's been a little rocky. And so we want to kind of share our message and maybe think about it in a little different way. And that means to stay well so you can do well.